this is Jocelyn speaking to you from the NRC here in Maryland. Thank you all for logging on today. We have a huge audience of about 45 people. I guess the first thing we should go through is a few housekeeping rules for everybody for WebEx, just to make it easier for everybody to hear and take turns when you do have to speak. Please use the chat box to ask any questions. That's located on the right-hand side of your screen. However, that's if you want to ask questions as we're going through the presentation today, or if you prefer, you can wait till the end when all of the presenters have gone, and you can, unmute yourself and ask your question the regular old-fashioned way. So we'd ask that you mute yourself through WebEx and your telephone unless you are a speaker or are asking a question at the end. I think a lot of you have already done that. We can see an X by your name, so I know a lot of you have done that. Just so you know, to mute and unmute yourself on WebEx, you click on the microphone button, which is located next to your name under the list of participants box on the top right side. Again, that's the microphone button, and it's located next to your name under the list of participants on the top right side. If you are not connected via computer, just please mute yourself by pressing *6 on your So, that was somebody's hold button. Okay. Yeah, and please don't place us on hold because then we hear your background songs. So let's not do that. Okay, so again, I want to welcome everybody today. We really wanted to have an opportunity to share with you all the stories of 4 states that have so far undergone or are undergoing the PEDS Ready process. The goals for the webinar are to share some of their best practices, things that they've learned as they've gone through the process to help anybody that's still coming down the line for you all. I think that the 4 states that we chose to share with you today are Texas, Maryland, Nebraska, and Minnesota. And one of the reasons we chose each one of these states, they've all had a good response rate, but they've also found their own unique ways of accomplishing that, and we thought that it might be helpful for you all to hear how they went about doing that, and then give you an opportunity to ask questions about it. So the agenda for the call will be initially when I'm done speaking, the NRC will give a brief update, and then we'll start with our speakers. We have Tony Gilchrest from Texas, Cyndy Wright-Johnson from Maryland, Deb Kuhn from Nebraska, and Kjelsey and her new name, Polson, and Kristi Moline from Minnesota. And when they are finished, we will hear a little bit from the crew at NEDARC. And then we'll take questions and answers. And also just wanted you all to know that if for any reason you're unable to stay for the entirety of the webinar, we will have it archived on the NRC website. It will take approximately 1 week, and we will announce it in quick news when it's available online. Again, if you have any questions or you're having any problems hearing us or something's wrong, please use that chat box for right here, and we can address whatever is going on at that point. At this point, I'm going to turn the things over to Jacqueline at the NRC.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jacqueline. I'm the director of the National Resource Center, and I wanted to welcome you. This is the first time that we've used WebEx for this sort of town hall call, so please let us know at the end of this meeting through email, and we'll probably send out an evaluation, just the ease of use with WebEx, because this is something that we can use in the future, and we're still working out the kinks. But I wanted to provide you with a quick update. I'm sorry, I'm multitasking. I'm trying to bring up my screen. But I wanted to show you a few resources that the NRC has available or will make available in the next few days. And then I'll also let you know that there is a team of NRC staff members here to work with each and every one of you at some point during the Pediatric Readiness Project. So it consists of Stephanie Bren, who's leading the State Partnership Outreach, Karen Belly, and myself. And each and every one of us is assigned to a State Partnership grantee, and we'll touch base with them at some point during the assessment just to make sure that there are needs that we can address. In addition, we have Susan Numa, who is our communications strategist, who is doing outreach to all the national organizations and really doing a public relations and public awareness outreach for everyone. Many of you have worked with her already, and she will continue to outreach to all of you to Cohort 2 and 3 and 4 and so on. And 5. The next thing I'd like to show you, if everyone can see my screen, can everyone see this cover page? This is a project that Diana Cyndia from the NRC has been leading in working with the ENA, the Emergency Nurses Association Pediatric Committee, and the Society of Trauma Nurses Pediatric Committee. It's a interfacility agreements and guidelines toolkit. And this project has been ongoing since, I think, January of 2012. And we're about to release it. And the purpose of this project is to really help hospitals who that do not have existing guidelines and agreements in place to be able to work with their leadership in order to create guidelines and agreements. Can everyone please put their phone on mute? And also secure these guidelines and agreements. So it's about 7 different...
kind of. No.
Hi, can you please put your phone on mute? So there's 7 different components. One of the interesting things that I like is there's actually an algorithm, and that starts the resource. And so it starts with whether or not you have agreements and guidelines in place, and then it walks you through the steps of how to secure this. So this resource will be part of the Pediatric Readiness Toolkit, and there'll be a special announcement when it's available for release. And we anticipate releasing this in the next few days, so we're very excited to announce that. A second resource that will be coming soon is a fact sheet for ED nurse managers. And so originally, a few months ago, we had uploaded a fact sheet just for nurse managers, and we took it down because we wanted to retool it. And what we wanted this to be was basic tips on how a nurse manager can complete the assessment. It's easy, low-hanging fruit tips. And our hope is that for nurse managers that are just swamped, we know influenza season's high, we know there's a lot of things going on, he or she can look at these tips. If they need to delegate it, they can, but it would just provide them with additional resources. So we'll have this available for you as well. All right, back to the slide set. The other thing, of course, is everything will be uploaded to our website, pediatricreadiness.org. We're uploading new resources such as the fact sheet that NEDARC and the NRC released a week or so ago, and you can always just access our website for additional resources. The other thing that's going to happen is we're really going to begin working on updating the state pages for each of the grantees. For example, I'm sitting next to Tony Gilchrest, and one of the things that we'll need to complete doing is really updating the state page for Texas so that we have the champions listed and just everything that's going on in the state of Texas or the state of Maryland or Minnesota as it relates to the Pediatric Readiness Project. That's it for us. Great. All right. So we're going to,
with that, we'll introduce Tony. I think you all know Tony very well. He is here with us now at the NRC, and he's going to be discussing his experience as the cohort lead for Cohort 1, but specifically his experience in Texas with over 400...
502.
Oh, 502 hospitals. Thanks, Tony. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Glad to be here. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Tony Gilchrest, formerly the manager for Texas. I'm transitioning now to the NRC, but I am continuing with my responsibilities with the cohort lead and keeping up with the Texas NPRP program until its completion. And so I was asked just to talk a little bit about a few things here relating to our challenges and successes in Texas. And so just to start out with, preparing for the assessment launch, for us in Texas, preparation was a huge part of the whole deal. With as many facilities as we had and just trying to get good contact information, you can imagine that was quite a challenge anyway for a state that big. But for any state, I really think that preparation, that pre-assessment connection with the facilities, with the managers, with the stakeholders, building partnerships was really vital to making things happen. And it showed the payoff in the first couple of weeks. We had a wave of responses that we would not have had otherwise. The next point, as far as raising awareness, well, actually the next few points here, you got raising awareness, and we're going to talk a little bit about developing the ground game with the partners and stakeholders. And those two things really, go together. Without the awareness of what the program is, everything from the details as far as what they're going to see on the envelopes and the letters, I think was important to, what the program is really about, how it's going to benefit the facilities, the hospitals, the freestanding emergency departments. We tried really hard to get information out that fit everybody's need as far as the larger inner city facilities really have a different need than those small rural facilities, and so we tried to get out information that let them know that there's something in this for everybody, and that this is more than just data collection, that it was designed to be a long-term quality improvement program. And so that awareness piece was vital, but at the same time, the process of doing that is really how we develop that ground game with the partners and the stakeholders, getting that information out, letting them know who we are if they didn't know and what we were doing, and at the same time creating those relationships with the stakeholders and reaching out to the partners. We got of course a lot of help from Sally Snow and the Texas Emergency Nurses Association, and they have been very active partners from the very beginning. But also we reached out to the hospital associations and the Children's Hospital Associations and the Emergency Physicians Associations, just everybody that we can think of that would possibly have a stake in improving emergency care. And we did that well in advance. And many of those organizations that we worked with were easy to create partnerships with. We had one of the organizations that was a little bit more sluggish, and so had we not given ourselves the 3 months in advance, we probably would not have had the good network of partners and the communication, and there was a lot of questions that were asked, and a lot of details that those professional organizations need to go through to officially endorse the program for Texas, and all that takes time. And so we started early. But again, I think that was extremely vital to getting our program launched in Texas, was to push that ground game with the partners and the stakeholders, everything from raising awareness to really developing those relationships. Like I said earlier, it's vital to the success of the assessment. Beyond that, the barriers. I think every state has its own set of barriers, and there are many of us who have common barriers, and there are some that are unique to your individual state. Some of them are political, some of them are geographical. Some of them are just the sheer numbers. I know in Texas that was obviously a large barrier for us, is just the sheer number, and the geographical distribution of our facilities makes it very difficult. And so, in order to achieve success in a broad area across Texas, we really had to work with, go back to those relationships that we developed with those partners, and work with those partners to help us region by region across Texas. We've got a very large, expansive geographical area that's broken down into 22 trauma service area regions that are, for the most part, very active, very strong. The trauma service area, they're probably the strongest network, simply because that's where the money is, in the trauma service regions, and so they tend to be very active, very interactive. We can connect with them quarterly at quarterly state meetings, and then we can connect with their chairs and their executive directors to help us get information out to the hospitals within their region. So, that overcoming some of those challenges geographically is just a matter of going through the different regions and depending a lot on our partners to help us, reach out to them. And I guess, as far as some of the other challenges go, there were a lot of questions, despite the fact that we put out gobs and gobs of information well in advance. And there were still questions coming from administrators saying, well, we don't see but, 3 pediatric patients a month in our hospital. We don't think this applies to us, And so that's just a matter of being willing and able to make those contacts with those facilities, with those nursing managers, with the CEOs in some cases. They're the ones that had the questions, and explain to them, why it's important that we get feedback from, every facility, what it means to benchmarking, how we can compare apples to apples, as long as we've got enough data from each facility in their own rates of pediatric visits, and whether or not they have pediatric inpatient services and things like that. Just answering those questions has been quite a challenge.
Water. Sounds like we got pokey.
Somebody needs to hit their phone.
*6. And as a reminder, you can press *6 to mute and unmute your phone.
Thank you. Anyway, that's kind of where we are with Texas experience. We have a lot of hospitals yet to go. As you can quite imagine, I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later. As we send out information, we get spikes in activity, and as information wanes, or there's a lull in information, then activity wanes some. So, we have a long way to go in Texas. I'm going to be working a lot with my partners and stakeholders to keep it going. So that's where we are in Texas.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Tony.
Okay.
I haven't seen any questions come in yet on the chat box, so I'm assuming that you all don't have any at this point. So we'll move ahead to Maryland, to Cyndy Wright-Johnson, who Cyndy was one of the field test states, so she had a different approach. Obviously, a much smaller state, different composition of hospitals making up her state. So she's going to go ahead and share with everybody now how she's approached it. Cyndy? Cyndy, we can't hear you.
Cyndy, you can press *6 to unmute. And Chandra, if you see Cyndy Wright-Johnson name, if you could unmute Cyndy Wright-Johnson. I'm not sure if that's why we can't hear her.
I wanted to echo two things that have already been said very quickly and then highlight some different things that have worked for us. The first of which is we were a pilot field test, so that we did have a long lead time to get ready for this, and that was very, very helpful. The second of which is what Tony said about partnerships and champions. We met over the summer with a number of what we anticipated to be our key stakeholders, not knowing when the launch would be. And then once we had a start date, ASAP, the Committee on Pediatric Emergency Medicine of our Maryland AAP, and then in our Emergency Nursing Association, we have a state council, 3 chapters, but then a nurse manager's SIG, or special interest group, and it was key to meet with those people. I think what helped tremendously in our state and could be replicated in a number of other states was to develop some standardized handouts. I later got permission, but I will openly admit that first I captured the National Pediatric Readiness logo that's on the bottom of the slide you're seeing and was on a number of our handouts that we had at our May EMSC grantee meeting. Put that in the top right corner of a header, our EMSC Maryland teddy bear in the top left, and that was my July, September, and November update to all of these groups, as well as to our EMS regional meetings where we have both nursing and hospital administration leadership. It was very helpful to have had September meetings to announce this and then a November follow-up. I know that both Minnesota and Maryland faced some challenges that a number of the states will probably face given Mother Nature. We started during the storm called Sandy, which clearly affected our state in the fact that we deployed key personnel out of our state. We also went through 3 major holidays, and so those were pieces of feedback from our nurse managers that the timing caused them either to, in some cases, hurry up and get it done, which was wonderful because they knew they were facing staffing challenges. The second piece of information that was very instructive to know and allowed us to create a list of not only hospitals that had completed the National Pediatric Readiness, hospitals that had started, and hospitals that were otherwise distracted but recognized that they needed to do this. And those were done through personal emails and phone calls. That second group was one that I personally, as the state EMSC manager, focused on, people who had started but not completed. And we went through what we had scripted out as a thank you so much for starting this. It's great to know you're not having any technical difficulties with the portal. Have you hit a question you're not sure of? Is there a section you're having a challenge with? The answers that we got fell into 3 groups. One was Joint Commission arrived and I had to put it down, at which point we moved them into the 3rd group with people who knew about it, were planning to do it, but had an obstacle. And we did have at least 15% of our hospitals that while they were trying to do this had a Joint Commission review. Hopefully no other state will experience that, but just realize that it takes about 2 weeks to recover once the Joint Commission has left. Those of you in hospital who've worked in hospitals will understand that feeling. The second response that we got was, well, we got to question 6 and we didn't know which type of hospital we were. And so I carried a copy of the assessment questionnaire with me and was able to walk them through a number of different questions. But for many of our hospitals that have self-declared in our state that they have a pediatric emergency department because they have a wing or a section or 3 beds they put things in. Some truly do, and some have not. We have not gone through a designation process like Illinois and Tennessee have completed and many others have started. So we walked people through question 6, and as soon as we got them through one piece of property is one set of answers, most of them were able to go on. The third most common obstacle shared by either nursing directors or nursing managers was, it's 90% done, I can't get the physician to do his or her part. And in all honesty, what we did at that point was reach out to our 2 AAP champions and our 1 ACEP champion and said, would you please call this physician director? So by figuring out with a finite number of hospitals where the nurse manager or his or her designee was in the process, we were able to move through that. Before we launched, we did a massive pre-alert, and I learned from Minnesota that the trauma coordinators were a great group to go through, and we meet with them on a monthly basis. So each of them left with a packet of the NRC fact sheet, our Maryland-specific fact sheet, which had the endorsement of our EMS board and our state advisory, the checklist, or what I call the 4-page red and black form that came from the AAP, and the guidelines. So they had not only the NRP assessment, but the national documents that went with it, and a number of our hospitals found that to be very empowering. Our other pre-alert that was very helpful was to contact what in our state we call base station coordinators, and in many states are called EMS liaison nurses, because we have a master list of those, just as Tony described a master list of nurse managers. Our nursing champions were also very instrumental in the last 5 weeks of the assessment. What we had our nurse champions do, and we had a pediatric, an adult, and a freestanding emergency department nurse champion. They actually helped the nursing directors or nursing managers break the questions page by page down. Specifically, they would say, I suggest you take the pages that have to do with equipment and give it to one of your clinical nurses and have them do that on a low volume, during a low volume part of the day. Those of you who are doing this during flu season, there may not be a low volume period of the day. They suggested that someone else, in fact, a number of hospitals had a nursing educator go through some of those questions. And by breaking it out, pages 5, 6, and 7 versus pages 9, and then if you look at the actual document, the pages that start on page 13 through 15, some of our smaller hospitals even had the text do it and then have a nurse go behind and make sure that they were able to complete that. The last 2 weeks of January, what we ended up doing was pulling in our contacts not only within the hospital but also within EMS, and that was very instructive to talk to the EMS supervisors in a busy county with a number of hospitals and say, who do you talk to when you need to find out something in that emergency department? And it was not usually the highest ranked person within that hospital. It often was someone who is a charge nurse on a certain shift and is either an EMS provider themselves or has a family member who is an EMS provider, and that was extremely helpful. I did learn again that a number of our colleagues in emergency nursing and emergency medicine do things by due date. And so we created a due date, which was a voluntary one that said, we need to know you have no technical difficulties 10 days before the process closes. So please go on, register your hospital, and make sure you do not have any technical difficulties. That was not scripted by HRSA, NRC, or NEDARC. It was something that our group of champions came up with. And I'll be honest, it really did work. There, of all of our hospitals, only one of them was not willing to go on and start the process because they knew that it wasn't required that they submit it. We also will be presenting the aggregate results at a number of our council meetings as we move forward through the spring, realizing we have enough hospitals, we will have 4 different averages to share. And I think the commitment that that same Maryland-specific fact sheet with that header will be coming back to them, and that we will meet with any hospital that wants to meet with us over the next few months, because we do have a finite number, was another one of our motivating factors. At this point, I'm going to stop and turn this back over to you, Jacqueline and Jocelyn. If we have time at the end and you want me to talk about our experience with military hospitals, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Cyndy, thank you so much. That was really very helpful. I know you've shared that experience and a lot of those details with us as we've all gone through it, but I really hope that that's a benefit to those listening today, especially for smaller states where some of those details are attainable and doable. Our next state is Nebraska. Deb, are you on? Deb?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can now. Thank you.
Cool.
I thought maybe when you told me you didn't think you had much to say about this, that you'd really changed your mind on me there. Anyway, Deb, thank you for joining us today. Debbie had a kind of a different approach to her success in Nebraska, so I'm going to be quiet and let her tell you.
Yeah, I really feel bad following up on Tony and Cyndy, because ours is a totally different for us. As far as preparing for the assessment launch and raising awareness, I can honestly tell you that we did nothing other than the letters that came out from Peds Readiness. We, you know, if I went to somewhere, I mentioned it, but it wasn't hit hard. Our big push was once it came out, and then I started working with our EMSC Advisory Committee, who was awesome, our FAN committee, to go back to the hospitals in their areas. We had, excuse me, we had the chance to, Dr. Deegan, to talk at the Nebraska chapter of emergency physicians, so we were able to talk to them there too. So we've done more once it's been out, trying to contact those people. Now, we're really fortunate in Nebraska that we have 6 regional coordinators across the state. And I don't know about your states, but being on the EMS side in that, we're very, very competitive people. And I look at Tony's score every day to make sure that I'm up there farther than Tony. But it has become very competitive, and we're very fortunate out of this office that the hospitals, we know who our nurse coordinators for EMS are, and those are the nurses that we try to work with, because every one of the coordinators, we have to know our hospitals and our contact people. So as coordinators, they're each contacting their hospitals. We try to send out a note every week. I know Doug out of the Southeast region started calling his hospitals, but we've been sending out an email every week. I did receive a note from one of the hospitals that I shared with a few people, and Cyndy and Jocelyn, that a nurse from one of our county hospitals or community hospitals sent, and it was, I thought, really exciting. And so we have used that quote on any emails that we send out to show it's not as bad as you may think it is. So besides emailing, starting to call, using the quote, I think that's how we've, and the competition is how we're getting to where we are. And as of today, I think we're at 63.2 right now. Tony, you're at 53.2. We're at 10% over you. I just want you to know that that's the competitive side of me.
Oh, Tony's horns are coming out. Yeah, I'm seeing them happen right now.
Yeah, I'm telling you, we're competitive on this end.
I hear that. I had no idea.
Overcoming challenges, Cyndy hit on some of those. We're at the height of our flu season and RSV, and so for the hospitals, as many as we've gotten already, knowing that you call a hospital and they are just swamped, you know, I think they're doing remarkable. We've had several hospitals that it's redesignation time for them, and of course they want to get through that before they answer our survey. So that, you know, those are our challenges. We also had a hospital that I know they're told that they're supposed to run it off and do all of their checks on paper and then enter it, but I did have one hospital that must not have checked their equipment and sent a note, and they got not a great score because they didn't put all their equipment, and they can't go back at any time and fix it. And so I think there's a little of that now. They're a little, you know we did better. We didn't mark a couple of things, and they talked to the hospital next to them, so now we have to get through that barrier. But like I said, the big thing with us is I try to work with our coordinators every day, being on the competitive side, checking every single day. I check that little map. I love the little map. I check that several times a day to see if we're going up or not, and that's how we're getting through to what we're doing.
Hey, this is Tony. I just want to say I'm watching you too.
Well, I can see you from my rear view mirror, so don't worry. That's
great.
all I have.
Deb, thank you so much. That was great, and again, it's so helpful to hear the different approaches that you guys have taken. I really appreciate your candor, because I think that all of these approaches apply to everybody. It just so depends on, you know, the size of your state, the makeup of your state, your own personality, and you know, how well you are networked in your own state. You can try any and all of the above. Last but not least, we have Kristi and Kjelsey from Minnesota, who were also one of our field test states. Kjelsey, are you on? Kristi, are you on? I know you are, because I can see your name, but I can't hear you. Okay, hold on. We'll try to figure this out. Do we need to designate her? No. Okay, hi, who's that? Kristi?
Kristi or Kjelsey?
Yep. Yes, we're here. Can you hear us?
Oh, fabulous. We're so happy to hear you. Yeah, so Kjelsey, we wanted to take this opportunity to publicly embarrass you and congratulate you on your new marriage.
Thank you. Thank you. I am now a full team.
You're welcome, and thank you guys for agreeing to share your experience. I'll be quiet and let you talk.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Great work, everybody, for doing it. It's a lot of hard work, and we are participating in the field test as well, so I'm going to parallel what Marilyn said. We use our statewide trauma system. We have 128 hospitals of the 132 hospitals that are involved in our statewide trauma system, and so we really use that to our advantage. We got a really good, solid list of contacts for NEDARC to use, so we did a lot of preparation for the assessment. We also created a lot of buzz around it even before the assessment began. We presented it at the Statewide Trauma Advisory Council. We presented it at the Metro Regional Trauma Advisory Committee, the Minnesota Ambulance Association, the EMS Auditory Board, our State Hospital Preparedness Work Group, and also our advisory committee. We really wanted to make sure people were aware of it, so even before the invitations went out, we really made sure that everybody was aware and looked out for it.
So this is Kristi Moline. Thank you all for having us participate in the call today. We're happy to share our experience, and I hope that there's a nugget in here that might be different than someone else that you can take away with you, because everyone else has such great input. But we, as Kjelsey mentioned, did do some preparations for the launch, and we also had a really enthusiastic ENA representative that had been she had been presenting this before we even really had a lot of the information, so she was already starting that groundwork as well. Hello. With them and make sure you know who they are, that they know who you are.
Kristi and Kjelsey, you're going in and out.
Oh, okay. Can you hear us now? We're just on our phone, so I'm not sure if there's a connection issue.
Okay, we'll let you know if you go away again.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, so as Debbie mentioned, Peds Ready has been on my radar every single day. It nags me, and as Debbie mentioned as well, we're very competitive, and we've got our eyes on California. We are very close. We are 1 percentage point away from tying them, and we have every intention of overtaking them in their percentage. So that is helpful to have that competitive nature, I guess. A couple of the other things in developing our ground game, you have to know your partners and be very aware of potential partners that you may not have identified previously. And an example of that for us is that we have a large trauma center in the metro region here, and most trauma centers, all of them in Minnesota, have some sort of outreach program where they actually go out and do, trauma education with some of the smaller, more rural hospitals. So they have a network that already exists, and we were fortunate in that one of the large trauma centers, one of their outreach folks was very excited about this project. So I started to copy her on all of our status updates, and she would send me updates back saying, oh, I emailed so-and-so, and I emailed so-and-so, and I called this person, and what she had done is created a template email to send out to people to ask them to complete it, and she actually highlighted her own experience with the survey and kind of bragged up the cool feature of getting instant feedback. With a lot of surveys, you don't get anything until you see the whole summary, but it was a good carrot for people to get that instant report to know exactly what they could be working on immediately. So that was very helpful. Utilize your advisory committee. Our advisory committee members they're fabulous, and we have a pretty diverse group and broad reaching as far as their networks go. So we really kind of started out slow in our assessment, and our first advisory committee meeting after the assessment launched was in January, and at that meeting we had a 33% response rate, and we kicked it in high gear after that meeting, just got the whole group fired up about what we can do and how we can approach this a little bit differently. And at the end of the day, it was just, utilizing every last resource we had and every last network. So we had identified partners before the assessment, but, after that January meeting, we identified that there were other groups that we could work with, and a couple of them I'll mention because you may have similar groups in your state, but the Regional Hospital Preparedness groups. In Minnesota, we have 8 regions, and each region has a regional hospital preparedness program, and I thought that they would be very interested in the aggregate data that resulted from this assessment, so I asked them to send it out to their networks, and that after we did that, we saw a spike, as well as working with our statewide trauma contacts. They were a great resource to have as well. So use your advisory committee and send regular updates. I sent, every other week, I sent an email out with the status, and now that we're approaching the end of our assessment period, we're sending it out more regularly. And then don't be shy about employing peer pressure or peer influence in using some hospitals. Identify hospitals that have already completed it, maybe gather some feedback, and if they had a positive experience, ask if they would share that with others. And persistence pays off. We mentioned a lot of the networks that we've used, and we have an example of some of that persistence. One of the hospital, I think it was an emergency nurse manager, called Kjelsey and said, there must be a billboard on the interstate saying, Kathy at Fairview, would you please complete your Peds Ready survey, because she had gotten it from so many different people throughout our networks, and she was pleased to do it. It was kind of humorous, but that's just a demonstration of the persistence and really going to every single corner to work our networks to getting this done. Some of the challenges that we had right at the get-go, the generic mailer that came out that was addressed to not an individual name, but a position, a ED nurse manager or something like that, that did not work well for us. We did relaunch the mailing with the contacts that we had identified through the statewide trauma program. So they were the trauma program coordinators that were designated. Their name and contact information was at the state. It was public information. We used that list and sent them out to specific people and got some got a bump after we did that. And then, but I have to say, most of the responses we've gotten, I would guess, are from personal requests. So people who knew people who asked people to do it. And I really found it helpful to create an email template with a link to Peds Ready with instructions saying select Minnesota, then your county, then find your hospital, and do it that way. And then you can send that to your contacts, your networks, and they can just forward it along to their networks, and then there aren't any questions about, I lost the mailing or what's the web address. It's all right there. So I would say create a template on the get-go, and it will save you a lot of time and energy. As with others, some of our challenges too were the height of flu season and RSV, and when we kind of just polled our advisory committee on why we might not be achieving the results we wanted, that's what they echoed each other in saying that it was really difficult to take time to do it with RSV and flu season. But I'm going to ask Kjelsey if there's anything I've missed, but I think
we pretty much touched everything that hasn't been already discussed.
Yeah, I think that's everything from Minnesota.
Wonderful. Thank you both. That's great, and I love the billboard. We hadn't thought about that, but maybe we could work something out. Next up is going to be NEDARC. They're going to share some information with you all, more visual. Now, we're going to be, okay. Mike?
Hello.
Hello, Mike. Wonderful. We can see your screen and we can hear your voice. Thank you.
Good. So you can actually see the screen. Great.
Yeah.
Well, let me say on behalf of everybody, HRSA, NRC, and NEDARC, thanks to everybody, to all the states who are on the call and participating at whatever points there are in the process. We appreciate all of your work on this, and it's been a long, a lot of effort, but we're seeing some good results as has been mentioned so far. So just kind of to summarize a little bit of what we've heard, we know that there's some things that make this a challenge. We know that this is a busy time for EDs, and they're slammed with flu season and so forth, and we also know that the assessment is long. And so those are things that we just have to deal with and overcome. But the graph that you see, hopefully you all see on your screen, shows, just wanted to point out a couple of things. The importance of what the folks on the call have said about making efforts to call, to email, to provide handouts, to work with champions in the state, to work with any sort of a channel you think would be helpful to promote the the assessment and the completion of the assessment. The top line in orange is the field test states, which again is Minnesota, Maryland, and Guam. You can see that this is their response rate over time, over the number of the weeks that the assessment's been open. They're currently at a cumulative 91%. And you can see that after each of the vertical lines indicates some sort of a communication went out from the NRC, the postcard, the survey invitation, reminders, and there's some sort of a spike after those of some sort, but the reason that you see, you know, a lot of that growth and that climb in there is due to the other things that the folks have mentioned on the phone calls, such as making phone calls and sending emails and so forth. You see the next line below it is the Cohort 1 states cumulatively, and they are at about 40%. And you can see that there's a little bit of a gap between the field test states and the Cohort 1 states in the initial stages of the assessment up to about week 6. But then weeks 7 and 8, things have come together and they're about on the same track as the field test states, and I think that's due certainly in part to the efforts that we're seeing with Cohort 1 states. Again, beyond just the mailings that NRC is sending out. And then the line in purple at the bottom is Cohort 2. Now, their Cohort 2 is fairly fresh into this process, and they've just started in February, and so hospitals have received a pre-assessment letter, then the survey or the invitation letter, and then just hopefully this week they're getting the postcard reminder. But probably for most Cohort 2 states, that's all they've received is just what NRC has sent out. So, I mean, if you look at that dashed purple line going out to week 13, you know, if we were to try to project where Cohort 2 might end up without anything other than just the mailings from NRC, it would be substantially less than what you see for Cohort 1 and for the field test states. Might end up being a 30-40% response rate. I mean, that's just a projection, and it could be more or less than that just using when talking about just using the NRC's mailings. So, and graphically that displays that these extra creative things that the states have been doing really do make a big difference, and will end up producing a really good response rate. Just a couple of things to keep in mind as you work, as you talk to your hospitals and work with them. Let them know that, again, we encourage hospitals to print out the assessment in the beginning to gather the information, and then they can put it in one sitting at the computer, and that might help alleviate some of the concerns of where the information comes from. If they need to get some from physicians and some from nurses and some from the equipment room, if they do it via paper, they can hopefully get that all at once. Also, they can, even if they do need to exit the survey and come back at another time, they can do that. All the responses will be saved. So let them know that they don't have to do it all in one sitting if that's an issue. And also, and I think Kjelsey and Kristi mentioned this, if you're having advisory committee meetings anywhere in this process of the PEDS Ready surveying process, we provided a few simple slides for Minnesota for their advisory committee, which I think really helped visually to see where they were at and where they were at in comparison to some of the other states, and really helped to enthuse their advisory committee. We'd be happy to, work with each having a. Somebody's babies need some attention. We'd be happy to work with any of the states to provide information of where you're at, in terms of response rate, maps, visual maps, preliminary results, process, enthusiasm for, promoting the assessment and really getting a good response rate. So again, thanks to everybody, and this is really, it's really fun and encouraging to see all this good activity.
Thank you so much, Mike. We really appreciate it. Thanks for that chart. I think it's a really helpful visual to see the response and how it spikes after there's a little bit of outreach, whether it's through mail or by calling or whatever folks have done. I think we're close to ready to wrap up. I'd like to find out if there are any questions. Since nobody has written in, please unmute your phone, *6 if you haven't already, and we welcome all of your questions.
And this is Jacqueline. Just one more comment. The one thing that we heard over and over again is the importance of having partners and champions in place to really help raise awareness and just to help you, even at the end when you have to start calling some of these hospitals that have responded. So if you, we're first encouraging everyone to look at their EMSC Advisory Council. Second, if you need additional help, you just don't know how to identify champions or how to get connected, call Stephanie Bren, call me at the NRC, call anyone at the NRC to help you identify champions. And that's it for me, and we're going to open it up for questions and answers.
Great. I wanted to just see if, I think Cyndy had written to us and said that she'd forgotten to mention one thing, so let me let her mention that now, and then we'll take questions. Cyndy?
Thank you. Thank you, Jocelyn. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I just wanted to let folks know one of the things that I learned in the first 2 weeks when people were having trouble finding the letters or had seen it and didn't know what they had done with it. Stephanie was able to send to me, and I believe that this is now part of the standard operating procedure, where you get a copy of the letters that went out. It says nurse leader on it. They're not specifically addressed, but you get a copy of every letter as it's being sent out. I even scanned the postcard and put together a PDF of the first 3 pieces of contact information, also a PDF of the assessment, and in the body of an email, typed the 2 websites, sent that to myself, and saved it in a place I knew I could find in my email and on my phone. The number of hospitals I spoke with or our champions spoke with and couldn't find the folder or the letter or the paper, just the ability to send what NEDARC and NRC had sent to me and have it in one succinct place, the exact same directions to everyone, was enabled people, as they were sitting there talking to me, to have the email pop up in front of them, and then they couldn't say they couldn't find it anymore. So that, I think, was enabling for them, and the consistency allowed me to tell those last few hospitals, we've treated every hospital in the state the same. I'm happy to meet with you, but let me try to send it to you one more time. We also got, for those who haven't launched, we also get weekly updates of the hospitals that have completed it, and the thank yous that went out, I think, were also very helpful. Thank you, Jocelyn.
Thank you so much, Cyndy. Appreciate that very much. Jack had one other comment.
Right, and one of the things that we did change, I think, after we started the process with Maryland, Minnesota, is that now we seed a letter. So we add a letter specifically addressed to the State Partnership Manager in each mailing. So for each phase of the mailing, you should receive a letter as well.
So you know that they've gone out when you're told that they've gone out. Okay, this is a good time for questions. Who has a question? Somebody must have a question. And remember to get yourself off mute, it's *6. All right, if there are no questions, then we will go ahead and...
Can I ask one question?
You certainly can.
Sorry, I thought I was off mute.
That's okay.
Just one question. if you get a response from an ED nurse manager that says, you know, we just went to electronic medical records, I just can't deal with this right now, I'm just too busy, is it okay to completely bypass that person and say, well, I've got this other contact, do you mind if I talk to so-and-so and work with her, and just bypass that person who was originally supposed to do the survey?
I'll take a stab at answering that. Yes, I think it is okay to bypass that person or ask them who the next best person they think would be qualified to have, you know, that level of information that they could get their hands on to complete it. It doesn't have to be the nurse manager in the ED, but that is the most likely person that will have that level of information and knowledge about that institution, which is why we recommended that you try to reach out to them. But anybody is fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Any other questions? Any other problems or observations or things you've heard that you feel would benefit others to hear?
Hey, Jocelyn, this is Kristi in Minnesota. I have one other thing if you have a moment.
Sure. Go ahead.
I just want to give kudos to both NRC and NEDARC and HRSA and all the folks at the national level working on this, and encourage people to definitely utilize those resources. If you have a question, if you have, you know, someone is asking a question about a survey, I know Patty at NEDARC is our contact, and Mike has been very helpful there, and Andrea, but definitely I would encourage you to definitely use those NEDARC resources as you're in the thick of this.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Kristi. A reminder that the webinar will be archived on the NRC's website. It generally takes about a week to get it posted, and we will put a note on Quick News when it's available for everybody. So if you know of anybody who wasn't able to make it today, please recommend that they do check it out. We want to thank everybody. It was a great response today. I hope this was helpful for everybody. Remember to pick up the phone and call if you've got questions or problems with Pete's Ready or anything. And hopefully we'll be in touch real soon. So thank you so much.